Birds in the neighborhood in the afternoon, chirping in the homes and woods stood with lush lawns in precise rows. As well as tidy driveways, it was the kind of a location where people wished to live. At least it's safe, friendly, and tranquil. That's what Marcus Thompson and Angela Thompson believed that after they relocated, Angela and Marcus had earned this life by hard effort. Angela was self-assured, amiable, and always thought it was important to be nice to Marcus. The spouse was composed, kind, and always supporting one another. They created the ideal team. Relocating to this area was their opportunity to create a future, a new beginning in a setting where everything seemed ideal, but they were unaware of. Not everyone was pleased with their arrival as we go with this narrative. Us in the viewing comments section. And sign up to become a member of the Living Angela Fixed the Bow on the Tails tribe. She was holding a gift basket that included spent several hours assembling a bottle, a handwritten note, some wine, and some appetizers. See that she want for things to be fair. Yes, Angela, you believe this is excessive? Questioned Marcus in a worried voice. Energy. Marcus chuckled and shook his Angela. You could have just brought that cookies, but it's good that you went all out. Angela grinned. They're going to love it. Attempting to unwind, she had always thought in creating a favorable first impression as they strolled down the road in the direction of her heels tapping at her neighbor's home. Gently on the sidewalk, she was unable to assist, but take note of how silent the drapes were. People changed in windows and peeked, only to swiftly vanish after Angela and Marcus gave the dog a quick look. From one of the yards, the loud barking, "Are they the ones making noise to shatter the silence?" Angela muttered to Marcus as she stared at us, provided a little shrug, indicating that it's likely a new people in the area are interested, he added. Although she could tell by the tightness in his voice. He also became aware of it when they eventually arrived at the door. Angela paused for a moment. Do you believe this to be a terrible? She held the basket and stated, I have an idea. Marcus squeezed her a little more tightly. Come on, Angela. It's a comforting glance. Well, let's just say hello to Angela. Nodded and inhaled deeply before knocking. The sound reverberated softly against the door. More volume than she had anticipated for a little while, a peaceful street was. The door creaked open, but nothing. A lady stood there, carefully peeping out. She just didn't welcome them or smile. Angela stared at them for a while. The amiable one always gave it her all. Hello, we're Angela, your new neighbors. And Marcus Thompson, with whom we just moved in down the road, and we decided to pay a visit and greet the lady who blinked. She opened the door no further, blank. Angela felt a bit sad, but she remained grinning until the lady whispered, Hello. Angela displayed the basket for us, provided you with this little item. To present, the lady paused, then opened the door carefully. She extended her arm and grasped the she called over to basket Richard. The new neighbors have arrived. Behind her, a male suddenly emerged, towering and amiable with a kind grin that put Angela at ease right away and welcome. He replied, trembling as he stepped nearer. He shook both of their hands firmly. His sincere grin makes it a pleasure to meet him. Richard said, You two come in. And waved. Angela and Marcus conversed inside. A quick look before passing through the house's door was exquisite. Wide windows and polished hardwood flooring. It brought in a lot of light and a comfortable but sophisticated vibe. It seemed like the kind of A house that would be featured in a magazine. You're comfortable, Richard remarked, indicating the sofa that Angela and Marcus sat down with a kind smile. Sat down opposite them, but the lady remained upright. Her name is Sarah. At last she crossed her arms, and her tone wasn't very impolite, but it wasn't. Richard began to inquire whether they were friends, queries about where and how they had migrated. So far they liked the area. The tone was kind and inviting, yet Sarah kept silent while observing Angela and Marcus. Angela wants to shatter the clothes. Your home was a source of stress. Is lovely, she said, sincere smiling, and it's really calm in the area. We are really anticipating live. Sarah smiled tightly at this point, although didn't reply a few minutes later. Of courteous dialogue, Angela chose to try something else. "Do you need assistance?" she said. "I'd love," to Sarah in the kitchen. "To provide you with a." Sarah paused before nodding in agreement. I was preparing to brew coffee when she said that. Angela tried her with a stiff voice. Better to dismiss the odd tension, and Richard was sufficiently amiable at the home. However, Sarah's cold attitude persisted, and the Angela reminded her in the back of her thoughts. Her own reasons for coming here to construct. She followed bridges so as not to damage them. Sarah enters the kitchen in the hopes that assisting her might alleviate some of the. Initially, the kitchen looked amazing. Countertops made of white marble and sleek steel appliances made of steel, and everything else so well planned that it nearly seemed, "Your kitchen is wonderful and it's too perfect." Angela spoke kindly in an attempt to begin. Sarah hardly gave her a look throughout the chat. "Thank you," as she opened a cupboard. She pulled out and murmured in a flat tone. 2 cups were put on the counter. Her motions were rapid and somewhat robotic. Angela tried to maintain the atmosphere by smiling. Light, her gaze strayed to the countertop. There she saw something sitting there in the gentle light of the. There was a little golden box with kitchen lights in it. Glittered, its elaborate pattern glinting gorgeously. Angela couldn't resist. "Wow, I admire it," Angela replied, gesturing to the beautiful, exquisite box. "Isn't Sarah an heirloom?" Froze her hand, which had stopped grabbing for the coffee pot. For a little period she remained silent. "Anything." And then slowly she looked. "It's special at the box," she remarked. With a loud voice, Angela stared in amazement at Sarah's tone abruptly changed. "And it's Sarah said that she has been in my family for years." She swiftly seized as her words were truncated the box and transferred it to a cupboard, forcefully, closing the door as if to conceal it. "What would you have done, in your opinion, if, when you were in Angela's position, she felt a knot in her gut?" "I apologize. I didn't intend to insult Sarah." Quickly, she added, "I didn't mean to pry." "It's really stunning." Sarah didn't reply, but instead she returned her attention to the coffee. The air in her shoulders was rigid. The stillness in the kitchen got thicker. Extending beyond its proper length, Angela tried to clear her throat. "Get rid of the uneasiness. Is anything," she asked, her voice, "if there is anything more I can do?" Sarah answered firmly, "I've got it." But gently, no. Angela simply stood there for a while. Not knowing what to do, she looked back at the cabinet in which Sarah had placed the package, subsequently made a U-turn, and returned to the. Angela exited the kitchen and entered the living room. Sarah's eyes furrowed as she watched her go. Her lips were gently pressed into a thin Marcus and Marcus are on the living room line. Richard was engaged in a lengthy discussion. Marcus was making Richard chuckle. Had spoken, his upbeat enthusiasm, energizing the. Angela went back to the room and looked around. He looked at her next to Marcus and saw the expression on her face. "Everything is okay?" Questioned in a low voice, Angela paused before she nodded and added, "Yeah, everything is fine." Attempting a little grin, but Marcus was aware he knew that. Something had happened to his wife. He chose not to push in that kitchen. At least not at this moment, Richard. Grinning, I got up. This meeting had been fantastic. He responded kindly. "I hope you two are. All right, we're settling in," Marcus said. "Once again, we appreciate you having us over." As everyone made their way to the entrance, Angela sensed a feeling that the visit hadn't been flawless, but at least she was done with it. Eagerly anticipating returning home and disregarding Sarah's peculiar behavior, yet they were preparing to interrupt Sarah's voice. "Stop them and wait," she replied sternly. Marcus and Angela turned to face her. Sarah was a few steps away from her. Her arms were firmly folded over her chest. Her eyes were frigid and her face looked stern. Sarah's voice remarked, "I'm missing something," accused Angela, who blinked in confusion. "She requested one of my gold spoons, right?" Sarah's voice became harsher as she spoke. Marcus scowled and said, "There must be some kind of error," he stated in a calm manner, but adamant that Sarah is correct, snapped it when it was on the counter in the box. "The one she was seeing," she murmured, aiming straight at Angela's. Her stomach fell, and she parted her lips to reply. But you didn't say anything. The only person with me in the kitchen. I believe Sarah's tone continues to rise. Angela stared. We must check your luggage. Her thoughts were racing, and she was angry with Sarah. More than that, but rising in her chest, she was offended when Marcus moved ahead with his, "This is absurd," he stated in a firm voice. "Richard," Angela didn't take anything, trying to intervene, while seeming uneasy. "Perhaps it's just out of place," he murmured to Sarah. Sarah shook her, yet his tone was cautious. "No, I am aware that it existed before she entered the kitchen, as her request, and Angela's hands trembled now that it was gone. A little, but she calmed you with her speech. Can look through my purse," she added. "Purposeful, I have nothing to conceal. If you had been in Angela's position, would you have Richard let someone inspect your suitcase?" Examined his wife's face. "Sarah, please, are you certain about this?" he requested in a low voice, but Sarah didn't respond. She reached down and grabbed Angela's bag. She opened it rapidly, and her face brightened up. Coming up with triumph, she produced a gold spoon, raising it so that everyone can see. "Look there," she remarked in a voice. Angela, full with self-satisfaction, felt as if the earth had just been pulled from under her. She gazed at Sarah, stated, "The spoon has her mind racing." "I told you," turning to Richard and Marcus. "I was aware." Marcus moved forward, raising his voice. "This doesn't quite make sense." He questioned why Angela would accept anything. "Like that, Sarah, you'll need to ask her," Angela murmured icily, her heart thumping in. She felt a mixture of disbelief in her chest, shame and rage, but before Sarah took out her phone so she could talk. Sarah responded, "I'm going to call the police." Rapidly dialing, the room became quiet as Sarah's voice was heard by the operator. Calm and certain, "Yeah, I do need the cops. There was a theft at my residence. Claimed to have captured Angela in the ACT." Her thoughts was whirling as she stood frozen. Come here with just goodwill, and she was now being charged with theft. Marcus touched her shoulder with his, "We'll figure this out," he added in a hushed voice. However, when sirens sounded in the distance, Angela found herself wondering, how could things have gone so bad so fast? Sarah had no idea what the reality was, ready to emerge, and when it did, would completely upend her world. Was Sarah correct to call the police? Please share your opinions in the soon. The siren's sound broke over the silent suburban road, increasing in volume every second. Marcus and Angela were standing on the porch. Their hearts were racing as the police car's lights appeared. Neighbors emerged from behind. A few partially open doors and curtains entered their lawns, interested in what was taking place in the tranquil. Suddenly, the area was bustling, with Angela sensed whispers and conjecture. Her mind was racing, and she was frozen in place. How did she and Marcus end themselves in this situation? Had merely arrived to believe that they were excellent neighbors, and now they were being handled as though Marcus, a felon next to her, put his jaw and protecting hand on her shoulder, was tense, his composed expression breaking under the strain of the current situation. "Strong," he murmured in a steady, calm voice. But firmly, the police vehicle stopped. In front of two cops, and the home walked out. One of them was tall and solemn. The other face is partially illegible. Younger, seemed uncertain. As if he might already feel the air's tension, Sarah's arms were out on the porch. With her face smugly crossed, she looked at Angela after glancing at the police. Her gaze. "Thank you for coming." Narrowing, Sarah spoke fast and in a gushing tone. "I caught this lady with a hint of worry. She stole one of my gold items from me. Spoons in her purse, just there." Policemen looked at each other before one of "Ma'am," he remarked as they moved onward. Speaking to Angela, "Our goal is to determine out what transpired. Could you describe your side of the narrative?" Angela inhaled deeply through her hands. I shuddered a little and didn't take. Her voice was steady throughout everything she said. "Despite the brewing wrath and terror, I'm not sure how the spoon got into my purse, but I left it out." Sarah shook her with a loud snicker there. "Naturally, you would say that," she said. "However, I saw her close to the box she must have taken while Marcus wasn't looking at me." Moved forward with a forceful but calm voice. He said, "This doesn't make sense. Would my wife steal such a thing?" We brought a gift basket here, not to provoke conflict. The officer raised a hand. Attempting to maintain the situation under control, we will reach the bottom. He added that after saying this, he turned back to Angela. Would you mind letting us check your Angela's stomach roiled once again as she wished to yell, in order to insist that someone pay attention to her. Yet she understood how this would appear if she resisted gradually. Nodded and whispered, "Go ahead," in a hushed voice. The cops opened the bag after taking it. He took out the gold spoon cautiously, displaying it so that everyone may view it. Sarah gasped dramatically and pointed. "There, I told you about Angela," she said. Angela sensed her victorious voice. Her knees became weak. She was shocked. Was taking place, she glanced at Marcus, eyes begging me not to take it. Marcus came closer to his whispered voice, lifting a little. "This is absurd." Speaking to the cops, he stated, "My wife didn't take anything that had to be there. The air was when she placed the spoon in her." Hearst, tense in his role as chief officer, displayed the golden spoon that he had recently. All eyes were on Angela as she was taken from her suitcase. Sarah's arrogant face shouted on her triumph while Angela remained still. I can't believe the look of bewilderment on her face. "Think that this is taking place, Angela." The officer's words interrupted her rushing thoughts. Like a dagger piercing, "The quiet, ma'am. We have proof that you're in." He claimed to be in possession of stolen stuff. "I'll need you to accompany us." Angela's throat constricted as she opened her lips to say something, but what she said were swept away by the shame, sweeping over her. What she ultimately was able to say in a shaky voice, "Didn't understand that this is a mistake." In addition to Marcus clenched his fists around her, moved forward, positioning himself defensively, separating Angela from his tone was calm, yet forceful. "Cops," he remarked, "can't be serious. My wife is. You can't arrest someone who is innocent without completely comprehending what transpired." But the officer remained firm in his tone. "Was cut, almost contemptuously, sir. There is proof that the stolen item was discovered in her suitcase. It does not imply that she—" Marcus snapped his voice and placed it there. Getting a little higher, "Why don't you go further?" Rather of making snap judgments, the officer paused, looking at his partner. "But Sarah is a few steps away." Without wasting any time, he added gasoline to the, "Are you really going to allow them to burn?" Sarah remarked. "I question your authority," I said, my voice brimming with phony worry. "I caught her. And now you know what occurred." Angela's jaw, "She's lying to your face," made the insult more painful, but more than afterward, it was the recognition that these policemen were supporting. Sarah's living without hesitation. "This isn't possible." Angela felt her chest constricted. "They're not even making the proper inquiries. Are the cops allowed to ask questions? If you want to arrest Angela, subscribe." Fairness for one of the cops, Angela stepped forward. His hand moved toward his shackles. "Ma'am," he said, referring to Angela, "put your hands behind you and turn around." The globe seemed to tilt on your back as, after processing what he had said, Angela said, "Was she an innocent person in reality? Lady who will soon be placed in handcuffs like a nothing more than an ordinary criminal." Rather than assuming that Angela didn't say, her voice quivering, but becoming more steady. "Every time you say this, you're committing an error." But the officer, didn't his hand paused as it passed over her wrist, and Angela realized she needed to move quickly. So Angela took a deep breath and reached inside her. "You're correct about one thing, Pocket." Her voice broke through the increasing tension. "Something is wrong here." "But that's not mine," Angela produced a badge and displayed it to watch. The policeman froze everyone. Sarah's arrogant grin disappeared, to be replaced with broad eyes and a pallid face, the observing from their yards neighbors. Some even moved closer as they gasped out, "I'm Angela Thompson," for a better look. In a calm but forceful tone, she said, "I'm the quiet that the new police chief." Deafening the lead was the next step. The officer's face was devoid of color. Retraction of the extended hand as though he Chief Thompson, who touched a live wire. The officer stumbled, speaking just above Angela, nodded in a murmur, lowering the badge while maintaining eye contact with him. That's right, and I want to know immediately why you believed it was appropriate to go directly to an arrest without taking into account any other potentialities. The cop unlocked his mouth to reply, then immediately closed it. Once again, his companion gazed at him. Equally anxious to stay away from Angela's sharp eyes, you didn't even request additional proof. Angela went on to say, that standard is somewhat rising. Process. The chief officer cleared his attempting to re-establish any resemblance in the throat. He answered, of control, no ma'am. At last it's, if not, why did it occur here? Angela urged the police to stand today. The weight of their error left them stunned. Angela didn't hang heavily in the air. Wait for a response. She looked at Sarah. Her eyes were unfathomable despite her expression. Blazing if you're right about my guilt. Angela muttered icily. And then the guard. Your home's video will demonstrate it. Let's inspect Sarah's cams. When her confidence faltered, she retreated a step. Her face is becoming pale, which isn't essential. She responded hastily. I already informed you of what transpired. You don't have to squander time with the cameras. Well, I believe we do, Angela responded. She turned to the cops with a stern voice. Lead Toon, enter and watch the video. The cops looked at each other before. Yes, Chief. The lead cop nodded. Silently, gesturing for Sarah to take the lead, Sarah's panic within the home expanded as her heart thumped with each stride. As they get closer to the security, see how her hands shook as she struggled with the controls in an attempt to. These cameras don't always function. With trepidation, she forced a chuckle. Occasionally, the video becomes corrupted. The chief officer scowled, but we'll check nevertheless. Sarah's breath quickened as he spoke strongly. She was aware that the truth will soon be out. She cast a quick look at the controls. The erase button will lock if she might just push it to remove the proof and protect her fingers. Lingered on the button, but before to her might pretend that Angela's voice came from she took a step back from the monitor. Sarah paused and turned when Angela stated that fiercely. Gradually to confront Angela, who had come in. Marcus Angela's look in the room was icy, and she said, Were you? Sarah, I'm about to remove the video. Hurriedly shook her head. I was just. Angela replied, Don't lie to me, cutting her. She gestured for the policeman to play. The video, the audience became quiet as the video started to play. It revealed Angela gazing from behind the counter, the golden box, but avoiding contact with it. Sarah came on TV a few seconds later. Nervously, she looked around and opened the box, removed a spoon and placed it inside. The video concluded with Angela's luggage and everything. The lead officer, Sarah, came into view. Came forward, his tone icy, and he begged Sarah to clarify, but she stuttered. As her words tumbled past one another, I didn't intend for things to get this far. Said, I just assumed that individuals like you shouldn't be living here. Believed that you could frame me because I'm Angela Black, spoke in a harsh tone, and you believed that nobody would discover it. The officer reluctantly nodded in an effort to remove the video that is obstructing justice, as well as submitting a fabricated police report. That's one of the policemen committed a crime. Advancing and removing a set of handcuffs. You're being arrested, Sarah Frederick, for submitting a fictitious police complaint. And he firmly said, obstruction of justice. Sarah's face fell apart. This is a miscommunication, she sobbed, and I didn't intend. Her cuffing complaints were disregarded by the officer. Sarah's hands behind her back in startled quiet, neighbors observed as Angela took her to the police vehicle. Standing up, her insignia shining she turned to the cops in the sunshine. Firm voice. I hope this acts as a reminder to ask the appropriate questions prior to drawing any judgments, she said. Embarrassed, the cops nodded. Obvious when Sarah was pushed aside by Angela, he turned to Marcus and touched her. His voice was gentle, and you managed that. Like the leader you are, Angela remarked. Inhaled deeply. Her eyes were wonderful. Slipping past the neighbors who had congregated. This isn't over, she whispered softly. Just the starting to subscribe if you think the street must always be ruled by justice. became silent once again when the police vehicle carrying Sarah vanished from scene around the neighbors who had congregated on the corner. Their expressions were frozen as their lawns stood for the first time, a mixture of astonishment and embarrassment. Time they had to face something uneasy that lies underneath the picket fences and ideal lawns. They seemed to be poisoned by prejudice. Angela and the idyllic neighborhood stood on the porch, still holding her badge. The automobile was tracked by eyes till it vanished, but her thoughts were far away. This wasn't just about the street. Sarah's behavior was related to something greater, a long-standing prejudice that observed her. Marcus and I are not neighbors, but rather threats from outsiders. Marcus shattered his voice is quiet yet forceful, you know. He continued, his eyes calm. Why did she do that? Angela nodded, in a calm but laced voice. In agony because we're black, she remarked. Lie, and she couldn't bear to see us here. In this world, in her area, Angela moved on, speaking steadily but emotionally charged. I am aware of some of you were contemplating when you saw that today a police cruiser pulled up here, she remarked. As the neighbors gathered outside, you believed that trouble was coming again. Follows those who share her views. There are some truthful things in the air. Neighbors awkwardly moved away from her eyes because this is what Angela. We didn't relocate here because difficulties. We went here to establish a life. As with all of you, we want the same tranquility, same security, same feeling of inclusion, that each and every deserves. Marcus's voice to come closer, calm yet forceful, but instead of being, we were treated as if we were neighbors. He added suspects, for example, and explained why. Of our skin tone, Angela nodded. She looks around the throng. But this isn't, it's about how, she added, not simply about us. Black people are treated in communities similar like this around the nation, were observed more intently, and were evaluated more, were penalized too often and brutally. Without proof that Angela's voice became quieter, but the weight of what she said resonated the peaceful street. Consider what occurred today, she said. And Sarah didn't charge me because she had evidence that blamed me due to a sense of, she didn't feel anchored in prejudice. See me personally, she saw me as a danger. Many neighbors gave a hesitant nod. Their considerate others' expressions ignored their uneasiness and remorse. Obvious, and Angela is the real deal. Continued, her voice cracking a little. For those, like myself, this is nothing new. We've lived our whole lives under the scrutiny of the worst presumptions individuals may make concerning us, and it must. Angela stopped, allowing her words to seep in, after which she inhaled deeply. Tone changing from depressing to optimistic. However, it need not remain this way. She said that this community can do better. Improve. It begins with every one of us. Examining our prejudices and confronting our presumptions and interacting with one another in a. Marcus agreed. We all deserve respect. Noting that preventing damage isn't the only goal. It's about establishing trust in a community where everyone feels welcome. That's what we're looking for. To call home, and I'm hoping it's the kind of location you'd want to call home. Angela's. Her eyes remained steady as she scanned the throng. She responded, This is our home now, and we're not going anywhere. Yet change begins together with everyone. In the weeks that after, Angela used the event as a venue to unite the community. She then freed Sarah after forgiving her, arranged seminars, invited lecturers, and brought discussions regarding initially racial prejudice and belonging were merely some neighbors arrived, but not all of them did. Ashamed people who are too scared to confront the truth. But as information concerning Angela's fortitude, generosity, and forgiveness for the numbers increased, people started discussing candidly their personal prejudices toward the times it wasn't simple to unjustly assess other people. And although it wasn't flawless, it was a beginning. Angela's work not only altered the area, they served as an inspiration to the whole town. Officials started implementing schools, introduced diversity programs, initiatives to teach empathy to students and inclusivity, and gradually the community started to feel and seem like the Angela and Marcus had, a warm and inviting place. Wished for upon their first move in. And if this tale touched you, did it teach you anything? Opened your eyes? Don't forget to sign up to real-life tales for more impact stories that motivate us to change together, can create a better future.